Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be in here in your company. Can you hear me well? Or is that too much? Let's see. There's so much to share, little time to talk, but I'll try to talk less and have more time for questions and answers. And I want to start with an Italian story. And no, we do not work in Italy, but I wish we do. Where Women for Women International works in conflict areas. And the story goes about a child, a very disturbed child in school. And they don't know, the school doesn't know what to do with him. He's beating other kids, is destroying chairs and desks and all of that. And they finally said, let's keep him busy with a very complex puzzle. And the puzzle had oceans and forests and mountains and all kinds of things. And they said, this will take months to fix it. And they left him in the room with the puzzle. 15 minutes later, they came to check on the child, and the child had figured out the puzzle. And it's like, well, what happened? It's impossible. It took us months to put this puzzle together. And they saw that the child had flipped the puzzle inside out or upside down, and saw a very simple shape of an apple, and followed that shape and fixed the puzzle, put the puzzle together. Now, I actually argue that the apple are women. If you look at any crisis in the world, and you will see women are at the heart or are disproportionately impacted by that crisis. 2/3 of the most impoverished population in the world are women. 80% of the refugees in the world are women and children. 90% of modern war casualties are women and children. 75% of which, are civilians, 75% of which are women and children. Women are 70% of the farmers in the world. They are producing 60% of the food in the world. They're earning 10% of the income, and they own less than 2% of the land. If you want to look at the rates of HIV or illiteracy or whatever you want to look at it, whatever crisis in the world, you see women and girls are disproportionately impacted by the crisis. But when it comes to solutions, the solutions are, you see women and girls are mostly on the marginal discussion. If you look at war as an example, we often discuss war from a frontline discussion. We often look at the army and the troops and the weapons and the military tactics and all of these things, and that's absolutely a very good way to look at war. This is one way of looking at war, and it's usually led by men. What we don't look actually is the backline discussion, which is how do you live in war? For some reason, and as someone who actually lived in war and now works in war, people forget. I'm surprised that people are always surprised to learn that people go to school in war, and you have meals, and you fall in love, and you go to parties, and go to weddings, and get divorced, and all the normal life happens within a war framework. But there is fighting, and in the TV you're only seeing the fighting. The backline discussion is usually led by women. They are literally keeping life going in the midst of war. Yet when we have peace agreements, it's usually about the frontline discussion. So it is about the ending of fighting as opposed to the building of peace, the backline discussion. And there is a way to include the two. We don't have to choose between women and men. There is a way to include the two, but no peace can be actually lasting and sustainable. And we were just talking earlier with someone here. Bosnia is a great example of a peace agreement that it was about the ending of fighting, not the building of peace, because you still actually have an instability in that country. And women in that way play a critical role. So rather than have women as a marginal discussion, check all the ethnic minorities and gender minorities, check, we need to actually change it into the core of the discussion. There is no way we can talk about the building of sustainable societies, sustainable democracies, sustainable economies if we are not including women at the heart of the discussion. And this is not because I lead Women for Women, or that I identify myself as a feminist or a strong woman, not at all. This is actually, at Women for Women, we argue there is no way we can have strong nations if we do not have strong women in it. So that the core of the discussion is how do you change it? And rather than seeing them on the margin, we have to see women at the core of the discussion, both at the decision making as well as the solutions. A Sudanese woman once told me, I was in southern Sudan and I was interviewing a woman, and I said, what does peace mean for you? And she looked down at her feet for a second and she's thinking, and she's like, peace means I have toenails. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And she said, well, for the 20 plus years of war in southern Sudan, I was kidnapped twice by the rebels and enslaved by them, which meant that I had to carry water and ammunition and food, and I was raped by them throughout the period of my enslavement. So I stopped. Every time I escaped, I'm afraid of staying in one place for more than 5 nights. So I walked for the whole, I think it's 18 years that she said, I walked and I did not sleep in one place more than 5 nights at a time. And I lost my toenails. And since there was a signing of a peace agreement, which is very fragile right now, she said, since the signing of a peace agreement, I stayed in one place and my toenails grew back again. So peace means I have toenails. Now I'm sure there's all different age groups in here, men and women, and I'm sure at least you've had a pedicure once, maybe. You know, so it's like, for me, it's interesting. Oh, it's about peace. So unless we look at peace from a toenails perspective, we are missing out on something really major, the apple. And how do you build sustainable peace? Now, as we look at conflict areas, you know, from Afghanistan to Iraq and Congo and Rwanda and all of these things, now all of these countries are categorized as third world, as a different cultures and all of these things. We have different ways of looking at what's happening there and why these conflicts are emerging there. And culture, for sure, comes as one of the issues that is talked about. So I want to stop a little bit at the point of women and the point of culture in here and the point of poverty. When it comes to women, I argue that rather that we need to see women as a bellwether for the directions of the society, rather than, again, it's just cultural issue. And let me give you more example of what I'm talking about. When Afghanistan came to Taliban, the first acts of violence happened against women. And the whole world said, oh, it's just Muslims. It's just Afghan culture. We have nothing to do with it. Afghan men also said that, you know, it was just women. Well, eventually, and I heard the story from an Afghan man, not anybody else, said, eventually we were impacted. Eventually, our own dressing and our own mobility were impacted. And eventually, the children were impacted, and the elders were impacted, and eventually, America was impacted, and eventually, our world was impacted. And so, just as I'm arguing that we need to look at women as the center of the discussion, we also need to look at what's happening to women as a political read of that direction of that nation. And so sacrificing them in the process, and we are witnessing a day in which in Afghanistan, as we are talking about reconciliation with the Taliban, women are one of the agenda items. They are not included at the negotiating tables, and they are, for a fact, being negotiated in the process. And this is from an advisor who is actually part of the negotiation. He said, don't worry, not too much, just their mobility and their physical appearances, not too much, you know. But so that's what his perspective. But I wonder, and the call is for all of us in here. You know, why are we not outraged to see that there's Afghan women being negotiated in front of our eyes right now, and we're all witnessing it? And do we actually need to see physical appearances of women being stoned to be outraged? Do we really need to be in that close to our face to be outraged? And why are we not demanding that women are part of the negotiations, not negotiating on their behalves, but them to negotiate on what they want? So that's one perspective, is we need to look at women as bellwether for the direction of a society. Rwanda provides a very good example where progress also starts with women. A country in which a horrible genocide, 500,000 women raped, 800,000 people killed in 100 days. And one of the first investment of the country is actually investment in the women. It's a fascinating experience of the government realizing there is no way we can build the country. And I've had several conversations with different government members in Rwanda. It's like, and including the president, it's like, why? Why did you invest in women? And his answer is not not emotional. It's much more, it's like, there is no way I can rebuild this country if I do not include the women in it. I just cannot clean a country that was 16 years ago, had bodies in the streets, you know, if women are not going to be part and parcel in building it. So the same thing, women are bellwether for the direction of the society. Violence starts with women and progress starts with women. And that's what happens to women in terms of legal or economic or violence or whatever, becomes a much larger national story as opposed to a woman's story. Because when it comes to a women's story, I think we have lost our outrage about the injustice that happens to women. There are hundreds of thousands of women getting raped in Congo as we speak now, and we are sitting here. You know, I'm not asking for everyone to riot, but there is no outrage. There are 1 in 3 women get violated in this country, and we are not outraged. The society at large, we almost got numb. So how do we shift that and we look at it as not only a woman's story, it is a nation story and it's a societal story. That's first. The second part is, because it's happening to others, we often say culture. What's their culture? You know? And I have to say, as someone who is from another culture, an exotic culture, if you may, I'm from Iraq, I'm a Muslim, I can even be more exotic if I want to tell you more details of my family. You know, I knew Saddam Hussein, my father was his pilot, I grew up with Saddam's family, you know, it's good, all of that. So you can just say, oh my God, it's just a culture. And culture, in my opinion, is 2 things, actually. So let me give you an example, again, of what I'm talking about. I was in Iraq a month and a half, and I encountered 2 stories. A story of a woman, a widow, whose husband was killed 4 years ago, shot in the head. She has 6 children, 4 of them are girls. She married 3 out of the 4 girls, who are all teenagers. Age 13 to 15, she married them 3, all of them. So I looked at her and I was like, come on. I mean, I'm very honest, and in her case, I happened to grow up with her, and I just re-encountered her 20 years later in our program, and that's another story. I was like, what are you doing, marrying your teenage daughters? I mean, come on, this is a woman-to-woman talk. And she looked at me and she said, I am so poor. I really don't have money to feed them. I really don't have that money, and I believe in their education so much that this was the pact my husband and I made, that our daughters will go to college. So it was a choice for me to marry them and make their husbands promise that they will send them to school, or keep them and I can't send them to school because I really don't have money. That story is not a cultural story. That story is an economic story. It's a poverty story. And that when we blame it on the culture, then we take away any responsibility and ownership that we actually can do something about it. Because in that case, and I would argue that 2/3 of cultural behavior like this is poverty driven, not some rigid cultural reasons driven. And most of them are like that. And that we can do something about it. It's about giving her access to support her daughter. But then the same trip, I visited another story in which of a teenage girl, 16, her father did marry her off at the age of 16. Overnight, she had to drop out of our program. And I was like, you know, passionate with the self, like, why is she not, you know, why is she not? And they're like, look, her father's from she comes from a very tribal area, and her father did cut the deal. And that was, she did get married. Now, as an Iraqi in this case, and so I'm speaking not as a foreigner in here, as an Iraqi, this happens, but it's probably 10% of the times it happens. And it's also culture, and it's also in the same framework of culture, but it's probably 10% of the time that it happens. And the way to lead change in that regard is not economic only, because in this case, it wasn't economic. It's actually finding the social entrepreneurs and looking at who they are and how do we foster them and how do we actually nourish them to go about in their own communities and lead to change. And that's a different style of leading to change. But what I mentioned that because often when culture is used, it's a blank statement that allows you no negotiations. It leaves the people on my side defensive and upset, and the people in here saying, well, I have nothing to do with it because it's culture. And the truth is, we need to meet somewhere in between. Mostly it's economic discussions, underlining economic reasons for these cultural practices. And and some are ones that are based on some other logics, including economics, that can be changeable because nothing is set on stone. The third thing I wanted to mention within that process of change is you can imagine as a group called Women for Women, we get a lot of jokes about us in the countries that we work in. We memorize a joke. Oh, women for women, why not women for men? How about men for women? Yeah, yeah. I mean, we know it all. It's all, I mean, like, yes, 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 yes. But in order to also change, and I'll tell you, I mean, what women, in order to also change, we must engage men in different ways than we have engaged men in the process. And we in here, I would refer to the women's community at large. So let me tell you shortly what Women for Women International does and the learning of what we learned, why engaging men is crucial in this process. What we do is we have safe havens for women in conflict areas, in the midst of wars and post-conflict. They come to our program after community assessment and poverty assessment that is based on poverty. It's a poverty-driven program. It's not if she's raped or not raped. But within conflict areas, they go through a lot of hell. So she comes into the program. She is immediately grouped with 25 other women. And they go, and there's a social contract between us and her, where then she must attend our program every week for an entire year. Every week for a year, an hour and a half at the beginning, and it increases to 3 hours to 4 hours as of month number 3. And she goes through 2 kinds of training. One is in what we call an educational program. It's access to knowledge. It's learning about her health rights, her body, her nutrition, her political rights, voting, running for election. 15% of the Rwandese women we graduate run for election, you know, and the political candidates in their community. But that's the same thing in Afghanistan and all other places. It's in different ways. Then educational programs, sending the boys and the girls to school, economic education, to start with learning about the value of her contribution as a housewife. My favorite exercise is that we compare her value in cash income to her husband's cash income and her labor to her husband's labor. In every single country we have done this work, and she ends up contributing 2/3 more than the husband brings in only cash. But it's about the values, not about she's better than him, whatever. It's just about appreciating the value of a woman, that this is my value in the household. So this is an education program that she goes throughout the whole year. The goal of it is to give her safety networks, to help her become a decision maker within the household and the community, and to have her access to well-being, emotional and physical well-being. The second track of the training program is a vocational and business skills. We're trying to get them jobs. Access to resources is equally important to access to knowledge. So we do market assessments, we study what the local economy needs, and we teach them vocational and business skills based on the economic needs in that country. Mostly it's farming, so there's a lot of co-ops that we establish in commercial farms, a lot of food processing, jam making, pickles, all of these things, bread, bakeries, a lot of service industry. We have, for example, partnership with Kate Spade that simply outsource to women in Rwanda, Bosnia, and now Afghanistan. And then we have textile industries. So it's all different things that it's responding to the local market. This is all good. She comes, she has friends, she's supported, she breaks her silence, she speaks up, she is celebrating, she's clean, she's beautiful, she is now having a job and earning an income, she's graduating, there's a big celebration. And the big question that I get asked all the time, what about the husbands? What do we do with them? So here's a couple of facts about this. What we learned, A, is we are not talking to men. We Women for Women at the beginning, and we at the larger women's community. That there's actually so much attention on women and raising her awareness and all of that. But when you go to the men, it's a vacuum. It's an isolation. And I have to tell you, very personally, I have moved from someone who is sometimes angry to compassionate, a great deal of compassion to men in the context that I'm talking about the countries we are working in. And few things change my mind. And I tell you the experience of a Congolese man whose wife and 9-year-old daughter were raped in front of him. There are patterns in rape raped women rarely get killed. Usually they're often left alive, actually. And usually the rape is always in public. It's never in private. And usually the men and they're affiliated to them are forced to see it, if not participate, as in spreading they're holding their hands or legs or whatever. In this guy's case, he was forced. They opened his eyes and he was forced to see the rape of his daughter and his wife. And he escaped. And you hear the story and you can't help but be like mad at him. For God's sake. I mean, she's the one who just got raped. They left, the house is burnt, pillaged. There is a daughter who's 9-year-old is raped and there are 5 kids and you'll escape. And he came back 6 months later and I had an interview with him after 6 months. And I said, why did you escape? And he says, I couldn't face myself. I was completely emasculated. I couldn't face my wife, I couldn't face my daughter, I couldn't face the community, that I could not protect them. And when he escaped, the journey of his escape is very interesting because no one talked with him. The only person that was available for him was the priest. And he came back because the priest told him, you married her for life, so you must go back to her. And when the man talks about it, when she talks about it, she says, when he came, the first few months was just quiet, silent. And she said, worse than the rape, and worse than our house being pillaged and burnt, and my daughter being raped and being homeless, is that silence between my husband and I. So what triggered, and this is just one of many, many, many experiences, no one is reaching out to men. We are cornering them, just as women are cornered to being victims, men are cornered to being the aggressors. And the truth is mixed in between. And so we need to reach out to men, and we need to reach out with them, not with a finger pointed, but actually with a dialogue and more a partnership and with compassion rather than an anger. And so what we developed at Women for Women is a men's training program. So it's called Leadership Training for Men. It approaches the leaders in the community, the pastor, the mayor, the governor, the imam, the military commander. It's a 4 weeks intensive training for them, very respectful training. There are meals, there are gifts, all of these things. It's a bit different appearances, because it's for leaders. And the logic is we say, if you want to be a good leader, you need to understand what 60, 70, 50% of your population are asking for. It's in your best interest. And almost always we actually get great results from these men. In Afghanistan, we trained 400 imams, religious clerks, and helped them write their Friday sermons about women's rights. In Congo, a military commander told me, he said, before I entered this program, every time I entered another man's house and I had a gun and he didn't, I never thought twice about raping his wife. I always raped his wife. Until I learned I could get HIV. And I could die, and I could kill half of my soldiers and my family. Now I know it's very cruel, but it's, yes, a simple information of rape could lead to HIV was not provided. There is no dialogue with men. Yes, it's very simple, but it was not accessible and it was not provided. And this man said, I stopped. I abolished rape. I stopped any man who rape. I now punish the soldiers who rape. And he talks about very pragmatically at the beginning. I interviewed him a year later, and he moved the pragmatic, hard-cold argument to a very moral one, actually. He sort of goes back to his wife, and he told her how much, what he has done, and he told her how much money he earns, and she told him how much money she earns, and after a few months, they saved their money together, and they moved from a straw hut to a mud home. And he saw the evolution of his life and the improvement of his life by actually treating his wife as a partner, as opposed to, so he does evolve. So sometimes you start with a moral argument, sometimes with a pragmatic argument, sometimes with an emotional argument, but we have to have an engagement of discussion. I'll actually stop with a story, a couple of stories. One, before I do that, in honor of particularly the Yale Fellowship, which is an honor to be in your company, actually. As you know, Women for Women International, I started when I was 23 years old. For the life of me, I did not think that this will come the way it is. I really just wanted to help a couple of Bosnian women. I did not know it will increase so much. And it started with 33 women in September 1993 because I celebrated my birthday in refugee camps, distributing the money. And This we are speaking now, and it's November 2010, and we've helped 270,000 women, distributed $89 million, and impacted 1 million family members, more than 1 million family members. And a lot of people say, oh, lucky you, you are living your life. Look, you're getting this award this morning. This is so fancy. You know, all of these things. And I want to give 2 tips for the young generations in here. I always say, I wake up every day in my shower. Here's a secret. It's a good day to fly, and it's a good day to die. And it's a good day to fly that life is so absolutely beautiful, because it's just there's so much learning to do every single day. And it's a good day to die that if, my question for me every single day, if I die today, because you never know when we'll each die, would I have died on a clean page with myself and those around me? And if I don't want to be a person that's like, just 5 more years so I can go skiing. Actually, I don't. I have to learn skiing. But it's like, how do you die with feeling, with living your truth? Now, to live your truth is not an easy thing. It's jumping literally off the cliff. It's takes sacrifice. It's take courage, because a lot of people make fun of you in the process. I know a lot of my friends did, when it's like, go get a job and buy a car. What is this Mother Teresa thing? And I always told them I have a better fashion sense than Mother Teresa, but But the point is, it's not necessarily easy to do that. But by God, it's worth every single second of it. So to live that dream, because you're only seeing the end result of it, maybe the middle result, it takes a price, but it's worth it to live our truth every single day. And in the process, to be humble and always accept corrections, because you do not have all of the answer. The answer is out there, you have some of the answer. So how do we always come at a solution from humility? And my best teachers in life, with all respect to the teachers in everywhere, were actually the women that I thought I'm helping. So I'll end with a story of Nabitu, who was a Congolese woman. When I met her, she was 52 years old. She was raped. Her 7, 20, 21-year-old daughters were all raped in front of her. And she looked at me and she's telling me her story. And she said, I never told anybody but you that story. So I was like, so what should I do? Should I keep it a secret, or should I tell the world? Because that's sort of what I do, is tell the world the stories. And she looked at me and she said, if I can tell the whole world my story, I would. So other women would not have to go through what I've gone through. But I can't. You can. You go ahead and tell the world, just not the neighbors. A year later, she was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, one of 8 Oprah Winfrey shows that we were in, and God bless Oprah, because she helped us expand. But this was one of the most humble moments in my life. You see, when we talk about women's issues in this era, in this time, we talk about it as a third world women's issues. It's them. I was also, even though I'm from that world, I was helping the poor women. It's them. And what she had taught me in that moment of realizing that her story connects to the other stories of other women that she does not know. And that her breaking her silence leads maybe to other women not having to go through what they've gone through. It's a profound acknowledgement, consciousness on her behalf. That I realized, and a profound courage, that here I was, and this was only 7 years ago. The educated, activist women who got a lot of these awards 7 years ago did not have the courage to speak up and break my silence. And as a result, I end up writing my memoir, as you mentioned, and I end up speaking up. And now I realize it's all a full circle. And there's a foundation that it's not about them, it is about all of us. We are these women. We are, and even if you're a man, we are these women. It's all interconnected. And it is time really for us to revive a sense of a movement for women that includes men and women, and doing it in a different way, a way that the world will not be saved if the women rule it, but the world will be saved if both of us contribute to making the solutions better. So thank you very much, and I look forward for hopefully a lot of some questions.
Thank you so much, Zainab. And now we're going to open it up for questions and for this part of having a conversation and taking advantage of having Zainab here with us. So I just ask you, if you have a question, to just please raise your hand and please stand up so that also the camera can be sure to get your question on tape. Please.
Well, this question was asked this morning, and it's a question of how do you keep that hope and faith and belief in such humanity when you walk and see that horrible, hear those stories. So how do you keep being Zainab? How do you keep being so strong?
I'll actually give you a couple of different answers than I gave this morning, although the same direction. I was not like that before. I remember, I want to share a couple of stories in that regard. Well, I remember when I first started this work, I would just cry. I felt guilty about everything. I felt guilty seeing water running from the faucets, really. I just like, how could I have so much water and there are people in Bosnia and Iraq, my own home country, not having water. It was just this. And I remember one day, it was a good day. President Clinton had honored me. I was only 25 years old, and I got a presidential award at the White House, one of 6 people, you know, and I didn't even know what's the Oval Office, and here I am in the office. I got straight A's, and I had a great GTP, whatever, GPS, whatever it is, GPS, whatever it is, 3.99, something like that. It was, everything was perfect. My work was doing really good. We just got a major media appearance, all of that. And I remember sitting home and just crying. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried. It was, and my husband at the time panicked, so he called the ambulance. You know, sometimes men don't know exactly how to behave, but you know. Though it was a very good intention, he was worried about me because I couldn't stop crying. And I remember the ambulance person called, she's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yes, everything is okay." "Is your work okay?" "Yes, I just got this award." "Is your school okay?" "Yes, you know, I just got all straight A's." "Is your husband beating?" "No, he's the most wonderful man in the world." So what's going on? And I didn't know how I was just exhausted. I was just, you know, you see, I realized, and that was one of examples of many, that I had done all of this but missed enjoying the ride. So what's the point if at the end of the day I was just exhausted, immobile, I just cried. And so what's the point? So that was one story. Another story, I was in Congo a few years ago, and I was just, this is before we started an office in Congo, about 10 years ago, and I was actually, it was in the research stage. So I was just talking to the villagers and asking them questions, and it was a community thing. And at the end of the meeting, I said, "Thank you very much," because they don't know, I was not giving anything at that point, I'm just researching. I said, "Thank you so much, I really appreciate it." And they said, No, thank you." I said, "Well, what do you mean? I haven't done anything, nothing." And they said, "Actually, just your appearance in here gives us hope. Thank you." And I went and reflected, and I worked a lot on these 2 stories. And the connections between how do you enjoy the ride as you do it? Because we may not end poverty in our lifetime or violence, but we may choose to live in joy as we do the work, whatever work you do. So that's one. And then there is joy in here. Sometimes it's as simple as having the joy to do the work. You know, thank you for just being here because that gives us hope. You know, and this is not Zainab, it could be any of us in here. That when you have the joy inside you, that by itself sometimes does the work. So that's the second part. And the third part, for God's sake, I have seen women who have gone through darkness itself. have seen it in its eyes, and you are one. And they, yes, yet they stand. The resistance becomes the smile. Do you see what that's just like an act of resistance? I will not stop smiling. I will not stop singing. I will not stop dancing. One woman we have who's the rebels in Congo cut off her leg as just a part of a very horrible story. I won't say it. It's horrible. Besides beating her, raping her, killing her husband in front of her, and killing her 9-year-old child in front of her. But one of the act of a horrible story cut off her leg. And we have a young woman called Lisa Shannon, saw us on Oprah a few years ago, created the Run for Congo Woman. And so asking every woman to run, to create a marathon and run in different states. And this year, she took it to Congo. So that woman ran. And with her prosthetic leg. And Lisa was asking her, are you sure? Can you really run? And she's like, no, I have to run. That's my resistance in here. I have to show the world I can run. I'm continuing to run. I'm not going to give up. And she ran. If she can run, who are we not to? Imagine. So I realized that the work is not in the heroic, the wounded hero. You're beautiful, and it was like a martyr of your own heroism. God knows I've been through that stage. The new stage is actually enjoy life, go dancing. I love dancing, I love enjoying life, I love beauty in life, and I do the work. And it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. And it's actually, if it's either or, then don't do it. Go and have the banking work and get, but you can't have it either or.
Questions? More questions?
No more questions.
Can you talk some about the psychology of rape, just the dehumanization process?
That's a good question. Again, it's weird. It may sound weird, but let me tell you a story of an Iraqi woman I interviewed. She was 16 years old, sleeping in her family's in a living room, very poor family, with her other sister and her mother. And literally, a group of men stormed their home in the middle of the night and dragged her and her sister and kidnapped her. And they were traffickers. Traffic in Iraq is one of the largest industry right now. And they were debating whether to rape her and sell her a virgin. And that was the debate. And she's hearing them debating that in the other room. And finally, one of the guys came, dragged her, took her to the room, and he was about to rape her. And she talks about that moment where she looked at him in the eyes and said, please, 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 please don't rape me, because virginity in Iraq is very important. It sort of ruins your life if you are not virgin in terms of marriage and all of that. And she said, please don't rape me. Please, please, please don't rape me. Don't you have a heart? And he looks at her in the eyes and he says, my heart died a long time ago. And there's something about that story. See, I feel so bad for her, what she's gone through, but her heart is intact. And it is his soul that is dead. And it's very sad, very, very, very sad to arrive at that level of humanity. And to have even the consciousness that you are dead soul-wise, but her soul is intact. She's injured, but she's okay. So there's this part, and so I don't have an answer. What makes this person arrive that stage? And how can we prevent that? And how can we do the healing? So that's one aspect of the answer. The second aspect of the answer is that same woman that I told you where they cut off her leg. She was talking, she said, I'm doing well right now. She went into our program. By the time I met her, she was having $450 in her pocket. She's sending the kids to school. She said, but what I worry about the most, she said, look, I was able to rebuild my life. I'm okay. It's okay. But what I worry about is the hatred my kids have of their fathers and their brothers' killer. And I so worry that the minute they become teenagers, they will become fighters. So there is part of it, it's a healing process. It's where have you lost, where is the moment where he lost his heart? Then there is a political aspect of it, and this is very strategic, and there's a lot of literature written about that, from Stalin writing in brochures ordering Russian soldiers to rape as many German women and break their Germanic honor, to Pakistani soldiers raping 400,000 Bangladeshi women in 71, to 20,000 Bosnian women in organized rape camps by Serbian army in between 92 to 95. That's organized. That's, for me, is political. That is, we go, we pillage, we rape. We go, we pillage, we burn, and we rape. It's part of the territory. It is a message often from man to man. As I said, raped women are rarely killed, but they are impregnated. And sort of, here we are sending your woman with your enemy inside her. It's a much more territorial, in my opinion, when that happens. So that's more when it comes to a political strategy. It's organized, it's systematic, it's ordered. There's also the aspect, if you talk to Congolese right now, they say, would you please tell someone that these militias are in the bush and they're hungry and they don't have anything, and so they keep on attacking. It's where they eat, it's where they get all their needs, basically. They eat, they drink, and they rape. And so there's this aspect of it. So there's patterns, depends. Politically, there's a pattern of consciousness, in my opinion. The second part is the pattern, I have, a UN general once said in Cambodia, don't you understand these young men who need drink some few beers and get, what is it? I used to memorize that quote. Don't you understand these men are just drinking some beers and getting some beautiful young beings, he called them. And this is when the UN, when women's rights were complaining about the UN increase of prostitution in Cambodia. And so there is this whole thing, it's a need, so it comes with the territory, and there is the whole thing of tolerance, frankly, for it. It's just, and there is the point of what happens. When was the last time, as Rumi says, when was the last time you sang? When was the last time you danced? When was the last time you actually had your heart intact? So, not one answer, but it depends on the circumstances. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And so I love what you were saying before about how we kind of use culture as a way to other what is happening to women around the world, because obviously women are not raped by culture. But just wondering, working in so many different countries, how much do you find you have to change the program that the women go through, and how do you sort of figure out those changes between countries, based on the different cultures and different situations you're working with?
The program is a template, it's what I described, classes, education program, vocational and business skills, and then they graduate. The change is mostly on the vocational skills because that's meeting demands, market demands. The educational program is actually a product of the experiences that we work in. So it's not a foreign program. We went and studied all these stories, designed these are the themes we want to work in, but the stories are from the women themselves. So and then each country then adjusted to make it more reasonable to be understood within that culture context. So not radical change. They have I call it, they have the flexibility and the ability to adjust it to make it understood, but not telling a woman it's not your husband's right to beat you. It's the same no matter where it is. There's no apology about it, and there's no cultural adjustments about it either. Sometimes you make that argument by using religion, and sometimes use their argument by using Human Rights Convention, and sometimes use the argument by using family therapy, but it's the same argument. It's not excusable. There's no justification of it. So I don't, it's not that, I actually find it amazing that the more positive responses that we get from these other cultures than the negative one. In Sudan, I was just with my colleagues from Sudan, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Congo, Rwanda, and Bosnia just this last week, and I spent it with them. And in Sudan, they called our leader over there, our director of office, Commander of Nonviolent Forces. And these are the government called her Commander of Nonviolent Forces. The other one, in Nigeria, they called her the Chief of All Women. These are coming from men, these are men who are calling that. So it's not, honestly, but talk to the culture, not in a condescending way, in a respectful way. And that's, you know, and that's what it irks people when you come and lecture it. And so the story I always talk about is me interviewing a Sudanese government official from Khartoum. And I was like, where the women, you know, if you know me, you'll see that I am on a mission everywhere I go. Where are the women? Where are the women? Where are the women? So it's a very easy job for me. Because we are not that much included, so it's very easy to always, Davos is a good example, where are the women, you know? So the guy said, you know what, please stop talking to us. Until the UN team and the US team and the European team and the delegations come with 50% of their own delegations are women, don't lecture us about women. And that's the point I'm trying to make. This is not about this way, it is about here. Yes, women in America have access to so much, but gender discrimination is still existing in this country. And you still have a lack of full political participation and a full representation in corporate boardrooms and in senior managements. So, and this is what I'm trying to say, is how I shifted from helping these women to understanding we're helping each other. And I need to start with my narrative for me to have the honor to be in their company. So as long as we go to these cultures like this, it's just not gonna work. It's just, and as I'm telling you, particularly as a Muslim, because the Muslim world, who is getting a lot of the attacks, is feeling like this: leave us alone. I have friends after friends in different countries who are saying, remember Amina Lawal in Nigeria, where they tried to stone her for having a child out of wedlock? Her lawyer is a friend. So I called us like, okay, let's mobilize. We're trying to mobilize women in America. Let's do something. But she said, please don't do anything, because we actually have more chances at stopping it from within the system and within Islam than if it comes from the Western world, because the men and the women will become, go into the defense. So it is, how do we look at culture from a different perspective, and how, frankly, we step in with humility and with also saying we don't have it completely yet. And that's when you go into the cultural change. But most recent experience in Iraq, very religious province, very traditional province. I'm covering head to toe because to respect the province. I want to work there, and the mayor tells me, okay, every official tells me, okay, but you have to meet the chief of the tribes. He must interview you, and if he gives you blessing, you can work. If he doesn't. So I go to him, and I'm really covering in disguise because I wear the same in Iraq, but in his province I had to cover. And he's asking me who I am, what I do, where I live, who my father was, which tribe I belong to, and all the answers I had is wrong for him. Wrong. My father was pilot. Saddam killed the people in that province. I live in America. You know, it's not good now. You know, I don't have a tribe. This is so horrible. Like, wherever he's asking me, I'm failing. I know I'm like about to be kicked out of his room. And finally I tell him, look, can I just tell you what I do? And at the end of the day, we're trying to help marginalized women stand on their feet and get an income, you know? And I skipped the educational program. And I went right to the economic one. And in that province, there are 200,000 widows, and the province does not have enough money to distribute pensions to them. 5 minutes of literally telling him what I just told you, he said, God bless you. And he said, women are like a broken wing to a society, and a country could never fly if one of its wings are broken. And this is the most traditional looking man you can ever find, ever, really. And he got it. So if we look at, again, solving people's issues, which is mostly poverty, as opposed to starting the discussion with culture. Because if you said the discussion with culture is leave alone, please leave us alone. But if you start with looking at real solutions and real economic solutions to address the poverty and the infrastructure and all of that, then please welcome. And that's the attitude that we get, is we need tangible changes in our lives and not just critical things of what's wrong with our culture.
And in that, how have you been able to work with other partners, other NGOs, other organizations, international bodies that are in the countries where you're obviously working with? How has that complemented or been an obstacle to the work that you're carrying out?
No, well, first of all, our leadership is all national leadership. Everyone, 100% of the staff of every country is of that country. and 3/4 of them in that context that we are working in. Everyone has a story themselves, you know, men and women alike. So that's very important. So local ownership is crucial in my opinion. And it means it comes at a price because they're not necessarily excellent in a lot of management issues or the operation issues, and it means that we actually have to segment and augment their services and train them a lot and build their capacity, but it's worth it because you're building long-term sustainability. They are the ones who are cutting a lot of the deals in a lot of partnerships. We realized a while ago that partnership is actually part of our work. We cannot do it if we are not partnering. So today someone told me I support Heifer. Heifer is one of our biggest partners. And it's actually a very nice partnership. We train the women, we take them from here to there, they graduate, we hand them over to Heifer. Heifer then gives them a cow, you know, and then they go there. Partners in Health or Doctors Without Borders are again another big partners where she gets on HIV medicine. Then she comes into our program where we're providing her social and economic support. So it's small companies in Rwanda, Gahaya Link, good partners. You know, the women get training, you place them in that job. So you have to look into much more seamless relationship because we're all getting in it in the same way. The change of partnership within the NGO sector happened, frankly, we always partnered with each other on the ground because that's the reality. But it was when our donor community in here saying we need you to partner, that's when we started looking at it seriously and say, we have to partner. And now we're at a stage where how do we even measure our joint input so we can prove the impact of our partnership, both in numbers and in facts, to promote and to learn and to have it lessons learned. I think you've been, yes.
What can we do to help? At lunch, Clementine was talking to me about what $27 can do.
Yes.
Share how we could be contributors.
Well, many ways. I'll start with, yes, the first appeal we often ask, or always ask for every woman in the world is sponsor a one woman survivor of war by sending her $27 a month and exchange letters and pictures with her for 1 year. Christmas is coming up. There is no better gift, I always say, than the gift of life. You know, it's Valentine's is coming up, Mother's Day is coming up, whatever it is, this is a very good gift for a gift of life, I call it. The second part is, so that's one thing. The second part is we have the Run for Congo Woman, and this is particularly for the college students in here. We have a Run for Congo Woman, it's actually...
We're on that.
Okay, you're on that. Great. Clementine, call Clementine if you're interested in doing a run. But actually not only for college students, it's for every woman. We have mobilized thousands and thousands of women. Last year, reporters and journalists run in New York City. So it is organizing a small marathon, and I'm not a runner, so I don't know what exactly means the run, how long and all of that. But a run, and you raise funds and awareness for it. The third one is on International Women's Day, and this is a non-monetary support. On International Women's Day this year, it started with a trip that I had with Rwanda and Congo. And you know, there's a tension between the two countries, and women are going through the same similar things. So I talked to both colleagues from Rwanda and Congo, and I said, how about if the women get together on a bridge between the two countries? And they said, yes, we can. And it started the whole idea of Rwandese and Congolese women meeting on literally a bridge between their two countries and tying their fabrics together and saying, enough is enough with this war. We are demanding peace now. So it started with a very simple effort. And now, and the same day, we had women in 120 cities, 18 countries. I can't remember how, from Japan to Qatar. I mean, like we have, women all meeting on a bridge in their countries and they're making their own images of peace in their drawings, and they're tying their fabrics, and they're also saying, enough is enough. So next year, we're asking for 2 issues. Again, the Congo, the violence in Congo, and then the one in Afghanistan in terms of making sure that women in Afghanistan. So we're simply really asking, organize it, your issue, but we'll give you a toolkit on how to do it. And then the last but not least, and the truth is always, about resources, and this is, so this is for Novo Foundation that does research, and they saw that 2 cents out of every dollar that is given in international aid goes to girls and women. 2 cents. So, yes, the $27 is incredibly helpful, but it does not necessarily, it actually, for a fact, does not pay the price of training a woman and giving her a job and helping her go through all of that. So we're constantly looking for supporters who would actually help us get a commercial farm and create a co-op of 400 women, or actually buying shuffles for women, seriously, or getting sewing machines for women, and these are all about jobs, or getting textbooks for women, you know. So these are more a chunk of checks and a fund that really goes into making it possible to deliver the program, because the 27 partially goes to her in cash, and some part of it, very small part of it, covers what we actually cost. So that's sort of the elephant in every organization's room who's particularly working with women's issues. Resources is very small for women, and a constant need for that. But thank you for asking this question. And the point is, for me, run, meet on a bridge, $27 or $1 million, they all work.
My question focuses more on Afghanistan. Could you tell us more about the project that you're doing in Afghanistan? And the other part of the question is that during 10 years ago, the rate of rape and kidnappings and everything of women were less, and now they're actually substantially increasing on a daily basis in Afghanistan. Is Women for Women doing anything in that? Or I know that a lot of statistics don't even like come this side of the world from
Right,
Afghanistan
right.
about Afghan civilians, but is Women doing anything?
I mean, the work we do is the same everywhere. We create women's centers
Rape victims.
to everyone, not only rape victims. So it's consistent, it's the same model. So there's always women's centers, there are always classroom of 25 women, they always go through an education program and vocational skills program, and they always end up with an income-generating project. What does that mean? What training we're teaching them is different from one country to another to make it to adjust to the local needs. It's quite dangerous. I mean, if there is two issues that I am trying to highlight, 3 issues that I'm trying to highlight in terms of women's issues in this particular time. I call Afghanistan an urgency. As I said, the fact that yes, there's an increased level of violence and threats, very serious, including on our own staff, which we had to withdraw some of them. Very, very serious. And these women are continuing and they're going, but it's very serious. It's scary. Last time, one of our directors, she saw on her desk, we'll kill you. It's constant. So it's very dangerous because the Taliban are becoming more and more active and loud as we declare withdrawal. So that's one. And in that regard, we really need, at this point, I mean, I was there in August. It's a very interesting point of history to notice in Afghanistan, hope. So I met a woman who was promised to be married at the age of 6, married at the age of 15, widowed and a single mother at the age of 16. And during the Taliban, she said she did not have anything, so she was forced to go and sell hats in the street, and they saw her, and she was describing this, so she said, they beat me up with the only pair of shoes I owned, and they broke that pair of shoes. It's almost more hurtful to her than the beaten up process, is the breaking of the shoes, And she has hope. She's sending her 16-year-old daughter to school. She's going back to school. She's determined to go to college. But in the back, as you talk to women politicians and men politicians, we are scared. We're living a time in which Afghan women are being negotiated away right now in the negotiations with the Taliban, and we're all sitting. So it's a very critical point where there is hope and there is the selling out.
But the statistics of rape, if we just talk about the particular thing, were less during the Taliban. I'm not trying to say that it was either way or anything, but now it's increasing. Is there anything that's happening with the system, the governance system? Is anybody helping with that?
Right. Well, the government is obviously corrupt, and they don't have enough support by the population, And I wouldn't take the Taliban away from some of that accusation of rape, themselves. Yes, for me, it's a reflection of a larger instability of the country that is usually reflected on the women, as I argued earlier. But I wouldn't make it an excuse. Nor do I think that you are. Yes, it's an increase in stability over the whole population in general, reflected mostly on women in a physical way, the rape and the violence.
A lot of times people are very, very interested in like developing buildings and everything, and countries like Afghanistan that they totally forget about taking care of, things like stopping and doing something that's sustainable, or developing a system to stop something like that.
So how do you develop a system to stop rape?
That's what I was asking you.
You empower women.
Exactly.
You empower women, so you do what you do to help them stand on their feet so they can speak up. But there is no way you can stop it from outside. You only can do it by actually providing them safety and knowledge and access to resources so they can stand up on their feet. And that's what you can do it. And you work with the men so they can also stop it. But there is no other way to do it, Yeah.
Shubha Chandra, the World Fellow from India. It's great to have you here with us. My question is around sustainable change and perhaps enduring impact. I was wondering if your country offices monitor progress beyond the graduation of the women who go through your training programs to see whether they sustain in it over time, and do they progress, or after some time go back?
It's an excellent question,
environments?
and a question we're struggling with, as to be very honest, as we speak right now. Because yes, we can measure. We do measure from her entry point to her exit point, and 6 months after her exit point. But what the women are telling, and now we introduce a measurement to one in the community to see what she's leading in social change. But 3 years after we finish with her, and what the women are telling us in a very consistent way. So now we are trying to figure out the model of how you deal with that. Is that they're saying you are creating a force of change on our lives. Brilliant, and it's measured. I mean, like the statistics and all of these things are there. But it's really hard for us to hold on to that change after we graduate. And so one of it is to continue to provide them safety, because that's what they're looking for, is actually a space sometimes. But now we're working with them on what does that mean? How can we, in a different way, hold on to that change for them? Provide them that space. I don't mean physical space. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's not. But how do you provide that change where you can holding on to them? One of the things that we're experimenting with, so the big answer is we don't have an answer. We're really tackling this issue. The second issue is when we've been able to place them in a place where we can find them, it's much easier. I'll give you an example. We have a contract with a local factory in Afghanistan, and it's employing 250 women, and now it's increasing. Or Kate Spade now just launched 1,500 new jobs for Afghan women through us. When there's a location where we actually can find them, then you can reiterate the knowledge and the services for them over and over and over again. It is when they go back to they get shattered into the community that it's very hard for us to find. So one of the things that we did to address it is stay in the community. Don't leave a community. Stay 5 years in that community. And discipline, because you want to go and help everyone, but discipline yourself to stay 5 years. So you are at least persistent in that change. And even though they have graduated from the program, they can still come to you. But it's not a fixed model, as in they get this training, and that's what we are actually in the middle of looking at it. But I do want to take advantage of talking about Afghanistan in both sides, because I recently was there, as I said, and talking about the hope. So I met 8 years ago. I was in Afghanistan, and there was a line in front of our office. And always there's a line in front of ours, not only in Afghanistan, but all the countries. The hardest thing to do is to tell a woman, sorry, we don't have enough supporters for you, because it's really hard. So and there was a girl. And the girl was, I went to her and I said, honey, this is for women, not for girls. And she says, I'm staying. But let me help you find a children's organization. No, I'm staying. Well, can I give you money? Nope, I'm staying. What do you want to do? I want to become a teacher. How about chocolate? No, I'm staying. I swear, whatever I talk to her, I'm staying. And I end up talking with her a bit more, and there's nothing. It was a crowd of women, and there's a girl in the middle of it, and it attracted my attention. That's it. And I learned that she's an orphan, and that her name is Zainab, which is my name. And so I obviously get intrigued by it. This is could have been her. I could have been that Zainab. You know, it's just a fluke of luck or blessing or whatever it is. And I grew up in a family was a nice family, very nice family. So I pay attention to her, and we realize that she's an orphan and living in unfriendly circumstances with her guardian, very poor, very, very poor. And we tried to find her a place, and which we did, but her guardian took her out and made her a maid. As a child, she was like 8, 9 years old, made her a maid. But again, so she went to school for a year under our supervision. She did very well, but her guardian took her out and made her a maid. And again, the woman who in the house that she was working with said, no, you have a lot more potential. So she takes her to an orphanage, and she puts her in an orphanage. And we don't know where Zainab is. We can't find her until a few years later. One of my colleagues watching TV, and she sees Zainab playing the flute on Afghan national TV. And she calls me and she says, Zainab, we call her Little Zainab, is playing the flute on TV. And she stays in my mind, but yeah, I can't connect with her. She's in an orphanage. And last August, I was in Afghanistan, in Kabul, and went to find Zainab, Little Zainab. Maybe I went to find myself, actually, I don't know. And went to the orphanage, and she jumps on me, and we're hugging and crying. I don't have children, but it's like, it's a very beautiful moment for me. And I learned that she's went to school in the orphanage. Not only she learned how to play the flute, but she's fluent in English and in computer skills. But she went to school. I don't. Like she's in school, but she was very proud that she's good in computer and in English, and she wants to be a psychologist. And I have to pause on this, because usually when you ask children in different countries, what do you want to do? And believe me, as someone from Iraq, we had a handful of psychologists in the whole country, maybe 6. Though I wish that we send an army of psychologists to Iraq, not an army of weapons, So the fact that she wants to be a psychologist in Afghanistan, a culture that is not necessary, it's not New York City where everyone goes to therapy. It's, it's really, there's not, that's not an access. So it was very specific. She had thought about it, she studied, she wants to do that. And so now, with the help of Mr. and Mrs. Highland, who are here with us, we're trying to find her a scholarship to come to America and to study and finish her schooling. And we're hoping that one day she can come to Yale as well and finish her schooling and become the first psychologist of Afghanistan, inshallah.